Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. Our fellow Americans are in survival mode. In fact, the impact of inflation is impacting low-income Americans the most. Here's the headline of an article on your screen from the Washington Post. Survival mode. Inflation falls hardest on low-income Americans. Welcome to this episode of Ignition Time, everyone. My name is Dr. Chhoda with Ignition Time. This right here is a little bit of information about me. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. Take a moment and check out my video. Hopefully, you'll get some ideas on how you can live the American dream, because I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. In fact, higher costs for basic things like rent, groceries, even paper towels are leaving families to make some hard choices. This is reporting from the Washington Post. Low-income workers have seen some of the fastest wage growth of the pandemic era. But those gains are being eroded by the highest inflation in 40 years. Think about that for a second, folks. The highest inflation in 40 years. In fact, while inflation is rising everywhere, price hikes are particularly devastating to lower income households who already have very tight budgets. And they have seen the largest increases. I'm talking about the cost of food, energy, and housing, the largest increases at different points over the past 12 months. In fact, of the 10 categories with the highest level of pandemic inflation that was analyzed by the Washington Post, lower earners spent a greater share of their total spending on most of them, from natural gas all the way to beef. In fact, the highest earners outspent the lowest earners on, guess what? Cars and furniture. Yes, while the rich are buying cars and furniture, the poor among us are trying to pay for gas, to pay for utilities, to pay for food, and to pay rent. In fact, the Washington Post says this: with their substantial disposable incomes, higher income households can, of course, more easily absorb the rising cost of necessities, but they are also less exposed to inflation in some key ways because of their spending habits. They spend most of their budget on retirement accounts, mortgages, and investments, and less on the necessities such as energy or groceries that are squeezing budgets around the country. In fact, lower income Americans spend more on necessities. Let's take a look at the share of spending that went to each category in 2020. Now, the high income earners spent less money on shelter compared to the low income earners that you see in the darker color here. The low income earners spent more on groceries, more on utilities, fuel and public services, more on health insurance. Now, the highest income earners spent more on vehicle purchases, restaurants and bars, home furnishings and appliances, also on household operations, retirement and social security. So you can start to see, as we scroll down this list, that wealthier Americans basically are shielded from inflation. In fact, they have stronger protections that actually shield them against rising prices. Substantial retirement savings and investments in the long run tend to do better than inflation. All of these rich Americans already own their homes on fixed rate mortgages, and when prices increase, they can actually pocket the extra equity, or they can charge tenants more money. Now, let's be clear about this. Inflation impacts everyone. It's not like the rich pay less for gas and food than the poor, but even though prices have increased for wealthy households, they can cushion against inflation by dipping into savings, by tapping home equity, or by cutting unnecessary spending, by eating out less, by trimming their 401k contributions, or not getting that brand new SUV or that next Tesla. Low-income workers, on the other hand, suffer from the negative effects of inflation. Their rent goes up, their heating price goes up, their grocery bills go up, they need to spend more for gas. There's no room for them to pay more because their budget is already stretched. On top of that, there are no more stimulus checks. Child tax credit payments are gone. There are no more unemployment benefits. So they have actually exhausted their financial cushion. Here's a quote from Javier Haravel, who's a London School of Economics professor. He said this: for low-income Americans, a small change in disposable income is very difficult to cope with. Every bit of additional inflation just reduces purchasing power. If you have a large income, which often goes with the fact that you're saving a lot, then losing some of your purchasing power is not a big cost. In fact, folks, as inflation is rising, economic consequences have again fallen on low-income workers and service sector workers who are dependent on the healthcare sector, who are dependent on travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality. Now, with inflation increasing, it's almost like those who suffered during the pandemic, those who were the most dependent on stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, are getting punched in the gut again. It's almost like a double whammy for the poorest among us. So what is happening now, folks, is as all that easy money that was pumped into the economy that led to the stock market going to all-time highs, as all of that money helped wealthy Americans, well, folks, some of us have been left behind. Now, when inflation is high, some people, like those who are on fixed incomes or living paycheck to paychecks, are prone to suffering more, according to the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And Jerome Powell said this: inflation right away forces people like that to make very difficult decisions. For people who are economically well off, inflation isn't good. It's bad. High inflation is bad. But they're going to be able to continue to eat and keep their homes and drive their cars. So unfortunately, inflation is hitting those with low income the hardest. Here's a chart on your screen. Inflation hits hardest for lowest earners. The quarterly price growth in commonly purchased goods, mostly groceries, by annual income. You can see that on your screen. Those making less than $30,000 a year, their price growth, in other words, the impact for them was significantly higher than those making more than $100,000 a year. In fact, lower income families spend an average of 11% of their budget on food compared to higher income households who spend 7% on food. The rise in food prices has therefore struck low income earners the most, which is extremely sad when you think about it, because guess what? We all need food. Doesn't matter whether you're rich or you're poor. We all need to eat. So folks, with all this bad news, there is one bright spot in this recovery, and that bright spot is that wages have indeed gone up. However, many of these wages have been offset by the higher cost of living, by inflation, and workers actually not being able to save, because guess what? They have had to spend all the money that's coming in. During the pandemic, there was extra income because a lot of us didn't have lots of places to spend it. But what happened was, after the pandemic, low-income Americans basically didn't have much savings left. In fact, on average, low-income Americans only put 1.5% of their money in retirement accounts, compared with high earners who actually take as much as 16% of their income and put it into retirement accounts. So what is happening, folks, is that the rich are just fine and the poor are starting to struggle all over again, just like they did during the pandemic. During the pandemic, individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality lost their jobs, were dependent on stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, were essentially made to consistently ask for these things, consistently check YouTube for videos on stimulus updates. By the way, it blows my mind that there's still channels out there. All they do is talk about the next stimulus check and stimulus updates and all that nonsense. Folks, there is no stimulus coming. If you think more stimulus is coming, you are being led on. You're being treated like a fool if someone tells you more stimulus is coming. I'm going to tell you the truth because I think you can handle it and I have enough respect for you. And if you think more stimulus is coming, I believe you are being suckered by channels who all they do is they want views, and they're pretty one-dimensional channels. My channel is about the country, the economy, as well as our money. And I am Dr. Nitin Chhoda. This right here is a video about me again. And I have overcome the cycle of poverty that you see on your screen right now. I used to be one of the low-income Americans, and now I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. Please click like, please click subscribe, please enable notifications. Also, check me out on Twitter. My Twitter handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.